Hey, sis. Welcome to Now Woman Rising, the podcast for purpose-driven, faith-filled, family-shifting, legacy-making women who is done playing small. I'm Alicia Hurt, servant leader, wife, mama, and your holistic wellness home girl. Here to walk with you as you rise, heal, break cycles, and shine unapologetically in your God-given purpose. Whether you're trailblazing in your business, praying over your babies, or just trying to drink your water and mind your business, we see you, sis. Here's the truth. You are not alone. This space is sacred and safe. So grab your tea, light your candle, and let's get into this soul talk. Let's rise, let's glow, let's go. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of Now Woman Rising. I am your host, Alicia Hurt, that does the most, so get ready. I have another phenomenal woman here, and she is ready to tell her story, so we're just going to jump right in. Is that all right with you?
It certainly is.
Okay, good. So please tell us your name, where you're from, and what brought you to this journey of being a Now Woman Rising.
So I'm Clover Taylor-Johnston, and I am a co-parenting coach. I am Jamaican. I felt the need or the call on my life during what I call the COVID respite period. That was a time when we couldn't leave home, right? We're just locked down. And so when you get up in the morning, if you're wondering, after you say your devotion, do your devotion, whatever it is, breakfast, I got into long conversations with Jesus, with God. What am I to do with this season of my life? Because I had spent 5 years out in China as an ESL teacher. And I was actually just resting and planning ahead. So I'd returned, it was July 2019, right? And so I was in a state of reflection, but just enjoying the summertime. And then my oldest daughter, who was in her final year, about to start her final year of nursing school, told me that she was pregnant. And that was a real shock to my neurological system and my emotional infrastructure, so to speak. Because here was I reflecting on my own life. Where do I go? I'd also applied for a job in Poland. I had gotten it. But at this point, so this was coming towards the fall of 19. And I said to myself, based on my own life experience of inconsistent and intermittent co-parenting, sometimes no co-parenting at all in terms of emotional and financial support. And what I had told myself at that time, as somebody who had completed a bachelor's degree, when my then husband walked out, one of the first things I thanked myself for was that I had this bit of paper as a tool that I could use to certainly financially sustain the three of us. And so immediately my mind went right back to that season of my life. And I said to myself, hell no, there is no way that she can drop out of school, because I see how difficult that road can be, and it is going to set her back, way back. And I said, no, if I have the opportunity to see her through the season, I am going to be there for her. So in my shock, all I said to her was, are you sure? And she said, yes, I am sure. And so she gave birth in 2020 of February. And basically, I became the physical caregiver for that kid. Now, some of her college tutors had said to her, why don't you apply for a leave of absence and come back? And, we had discussed it and said, that is your ultimate last resort. It's just not possible for you where you have reached and the responsibilities that you have right now and the forthcoming ones. So she said to them, no, this is a cohort program and I do not know when I will be readmitted. So I have to push through. And so I became that physical anchor of support, childcare support, and I guess some level of emotional support. And lockdown for us that was Vancouver, BC, lockdown for us came sometime towards the end of April. But fortunately for her doctors approved her return to school because that was also an issue since, she had a C-section. So they approved her return to school. It also meant that she still had to do her preceptorship. She had to go 2 days per week, like from before 7 until about 2 o'clock. So she had to go to do her practical. So that was really a time for me, it was really a fearful time because I just was worried about anything happening to her physically, and just not being able to move through the process smoothly because I knew she had the ability and the wherewithal. That wasn't the issue. It was just the emotional push and pull of that season of her life. Anyway, as I said, COVID came and she made it through and she was able to complete her training in that summer, right? So that was really a season of celebration for me as a mom to watch her push through and to be there to support her, knowing that this was going to push her forward so that she probably wouldn't have to struggle financially in the way that I had to struggle, because now she would be getting way beyond a livable salary. And as a psychiatric nurse, there is never a lack of opportunity to work. You can work in your full-time job and you can also pick up sessionals. So I was delighted and elated that I could have sustained her through that period, because I am doing daily flashbacks and just figuring out how can I really help her. But this was the ultimate achievement for me as a mother, to be there to basically push her over the hill.
Wow. So tell me, when something clicked for you and you were like you said, hell no, hell no. So tell me, like in that moment, like what made you realize that you were called to break generational patterns?
Okay, so for me, it was less of an issue of generational patterns, because in my family, I grew up in a Christian household where I saw, this is something I'm very proud of, having been raised in a traditional nuclear family with Christian parents who demonstrated their Christianity. I don't know if they were spirit-filled, speaking in tongues. I never heard that. But what I saw were practical steps in loving your neighbor and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Helping family. My mother was an elementary school teacher, so she was helping to put kids in high school, helping them to pass the exam to get there, then helping them with writing recommendations, lending people money to go to college, real practical, everyday life-saving steps for people to accomplish their dreams, and helping family as well, the extended family, because we had a large extended family. And my parents were always there trying to serve them in some way, as long as they had the capacity to do so. At the time of the breakup of my marriage and the recognition that education is a key component of moving you forward, right? It is a key, and I can't stress that enough. That's my case, and I have seen teenage moms from in all descriptions and all geographies who have been disenfranchised in some way and left out, left behind. If they were able to go to night school, finish the GED, move on to part-time community college, and then to full-time, I have seen that it has always moved them forward so that their children will have a template to follow should they choose to do so. So it's creating that clarity and a tremendous courage, right? And building your own confidence to say you can do it. So having gone through that season myself, what I wanted for the 3 kids that I ended up having was that I had seen this work for other family members, and I had seen it work for me so far, that I wanted to present them with educational opportunities that would ground them in the confidence to get a college degree and to build on it, because a college degree is not the be all and the end all, but it is certainly a place of uplift and takeoff. And that's what it was for me. And so in my own life plan, as I call it, because I had a plan even before I got married, which was to go back to graduate school. And I was eventually afforded that opportunity. I worked for the government as a PR manager at the time. And after being 5 years in full-time employ, I could get study leave. And so I took that study leave, left Jamaica, went to the UK with a 5-year-old, a 13-year-old, and later an 18-year-old who came. And so that period in my life was what I consider one of the most enlightening. Enlightening in the sense that it opened up huge opportunities that I would not have had back home. It also proved to me that as a Black woman with a developing country's passport, it doesn't matter how smart or brilliant you are, your education will never be recognized or as having the same value unless it's from the UK, Canada, or the USA. And that was a light bulb moment for me. So it reinforced that desire to empower my children to attain that status. It really did. It was such a light bulb moment that I would not have had that experience if I did not go to the UK. So my life plan to go to graduate school translated to a plan that facilitated them having a developed country education and a developed country's passport, because I knew that that was going to improve their life chances in every area and every aspect of life. And I have seen that materialize.
Amen. So what lie did you have to unlearn to fully walk in your purpose? Was it something about your worth, your timing, or your identity?
Okay, so I must say I have never really had identity issues. And here's why. As I've mentioned before, I came from a rock solid nuclear family. And I didn't grow up in the days when your mother had to hug you every day and tell you how much she loved you, right? Which is now a common practice. The ethos of my household, of care, that caring for everyone, including my blind grandfather at the time, you felt that love. You felt the fact that you were valued. And there was just that feel-good factor about being in this unit. So that wasn't an issue for me at all. And that was great. However, when you are now knocked down by the trauma of separation and divorce, that tests the limits of your personal identity and your security versus your insecurities. And for most of us, we bought into the happily ever after. Nobody goes into a marriage hoping for a marriage to fall apart and your partner to run off and leave you without support. No one of us. So that is crushing. And I can't emphasize that, because something that keeps unfolding as I'm in this space of sharing with people is that there's a mantle of shame that comes with separation, divorce, breakup, teenage pregnancy, shame and fear. And one of the reasons I'm willing to speak up is because I want to be a voice to help to dismantle and disrupt that aura of shame that engulfs each of us as we go through that season. Because shame pulls us to isolation and darkness, disconnection, depression. There is no value in courting and living in shame. None at all. And that's why healing is a prerequisite to every aspect of your growth. It totally is. However, in having your identity twinned with a partner, that is difficult to disentangle, because it's not only how you have seen yourself, it's how the world has seen you, your friends, your colleagues, people at work. So that is now very difficult to disentangle. And we often tell ourselves, because of the vows we take, that you become one. So how do I disentangle now and build my capacity to exist on my own? And maybe that is the lie I had to overcome. And so I had to do some psychological work on myself, that I'm good enough. I have my own talents and abilities. I have my own capacity for independent thought and for independent living. And therefore, I'm going to flex this muscle. I'm going to build it because I can do it. And so it takes a lot of rethinking of the psychology of your identity. And you have to keep talking yourself into it. And it doesn't help that you're going to meet people who don't know that you have separated or broken up, and they're going to ask for John or they're going to ask for Mary. And you sometimes have to keep repeating this story, however short. And so that was a little fear I had. And I tell this story sometime of meeting a colleague of mine who I'd met in my early days of work, my first job, running to her in the supermarket, and just knew she was going to ask me the question, about family. And so I was there feeling a little sense of dread and a little sense of shame. And so, of course, she pivots to that question. And I said, well, I'm separated. And she looked at me and she smiled. And she said, you too? And then she shared her own story with me. I didn't know she had been separated by now, because I knew her as married, hardworking with 2 children. But I reference this to just explain that sense of relief that I felt, that she wasn't about to judge me. She was about to say, welcome to this space. I'm there too. And so it was with a sense of relief when she responded in that way. Because we often not only live in fear of the judgment of others, but we live in our own self-judgment, especially in the early days of this season. What did I do wrong? Oh, I'm not going to survive this. How can I move forward without him? And, all these negatives. Nobody else will want me. Really very negative. So we are going against the grain of our the lowest when we are in our lowest emotional season. And on the other hand, what others are thinking about us. So I would say that was where I had to do some work to tell myself that I'm enough, I can get through this, and I have the talents and abilities to build on to move forward.
So, how do you balance being a powerhouse for others while still nurturing yourself?
Okay, that's a great question. And here's why it's a great question. Because for me, as somebody who raised 3 daughters, there were seasons of my life, especially I would say between the ages of, say, 0 to 15, where I lived in overwhelm. We know that the early days, it's physical work, physical especially, and emotional. And then there's financial as well, but maybe we can juggle here and we can juggle there. And so that season I found really overwhelming. It really tested every aspect of who I was or who I am. However, being a powerhouse doesn't always have to mean sacrificing. And we do sacrifice. And that is I often laugh and say to people, if I had to change my middle name, I would change it to sacrifice. I often say that. However, in your journey of healing and growth, ground yourself, and that's what I did. Ground yourself in your own values. What are your values? Right? So ground yourself in your values and the energy that you want to create for yourself. And only you can know that based on the resources that you have, and your own socialization. So that's a personal goal you have to set for yourself. But it's very important that you root yourself in your values, because that's what's going to power you forward, right? Is it ambition that's going to power you forward? Or are you going to just wallow in self-pity? What is it? Which one are you going to choose? All right? And once you root yourself in your own values and you are comfortable in your own skin, you can actually serve and share from a place of overflow, which is what we should really all be aiming to do. And that place of overflow comes from creating resilience. And resilience doesn't come naturally. It comes with your ability to fight. It is what I call a cultivated gift. That when you are knocked down, you get up again and you have a willingness to fight till you overcome that hurdle that's facing you. And there are 2 muscles I think we need to build. Two great, to me, the greatest spiritual muscles. It's joy and peace. You have to be at peace with yourself, and you have to build joy. Whatever brings you joy, focus on that. And I remember in a conversation with my youngest daughter, she was making a comment about, I think, the relationship her dad and I had. And I said to her, in every relationship, you have to make sure that there are more deposits than withdrawals. Because if you don't have more deposits than withdrawals, you are going to go into an overdraft position. And if you go into emotional overdraft, it's signaling a red flag. And so that building of joy and peace were critical to me, because peace is where I hear the voice of God. It's also where I get downloads, where your ideas flow. Your ideas can't flow in the noise and the rough and tumble of life. It just doesn't. Well, it doesn't work for me. You have to closet. You have to go. And when I said go, it doesn't mean changing a country or wherever, but it may just mean to find a safe, quiet space where you can just disentangle from everyone. You're not thinking of the laundry today. You're not thinking of the bills, but you just find a space where you can actually just focus and listen to that voice. And I have heard that voice. And for me also, I've built a rhythm in life where rest is strategic. I remember in my tenure as a PR manager, I remember one of our service providers, he was a videographer. And one day he met me outside of work and he said to me, "Oh, you always seem so busy. You always seem so busy. How do you cope?" And I said, "You know what? I have what you call do nothing days." And I honestly do. Because if you don't carve out, especially as you mature and you get older, there's so much on your plate that if you don't compartmentalize and say, okay, these are my days of rest, and it might not be even lying in bed or physical rest, but it might be doing something that's meaningful for you, right? It could be just sitting with your daily word and having a chat with God. I remember when I was actually going off to graduate school and the overwhelm of how am I going to provide for these two kids? And I was really having little gremlins of doubt, little voices. How are you going to cope? How are you going to manage? And that morning I opened my daily word, yes? And the word for that day was God never made the water firm until Peter put his foot down. And that's all I needed to hear that day, because that was signaling to me that God was saying, girl, this is your journey. Jump on it. You are going and I have your back. And so there are just seasons in life when I've heard so clearly, gotten, that affirmation that I needed. There was another time, which was, I think it was the end of 2013, my oldest daughter again was having some issues and she needed help because she was also helping my father, who was having real massive health issues. And I was there asking God, should I go, should I not? Because I was doing a part-time job at the time and I know it was going to be disruptive for them, and it probably wouldn't reflect well on me. But anyway, I remember I later recognized it as a vision. At that time, I didn't even recognize it as a vision, but it was a vision of Jesus, and I saw like a hand beckoning, and I'm saying, what does this mean? And it was actually months later I recognized it as a vision, and God was just signaling to me again to say, go, I want you to go. And the reason why that was so instructive for me is that later on, looking back, I realized that it was all part of a plan that was unfolding. That was an answer to prayer, because I was praying at the time for an opportunity, for him to grant an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. I was asking him for an out to get out of that relationship with the father of my third child, and also to be in a position to fund her education overseas. And that actually was the start of the journey that led me there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot. Well, thank you for sharing that. How has your definition of success changed as you've grown in faith and in purpose?
Okay, so definitely there has been some change. I think when we are younger, we see success, and I'm not saying these are not markers of success, because for everybody it's different. It might be that Mercedes-Benz, or it may be that Maserati, it may be a 5-bedroom house. So it might be more material stuff for most of us. because my own vision of success was not crafted around materialism, albeit important to move us from point A to Z. But because of my own life story and the responsibilities that I had to face in parenting, basically carrying that mantle mostly on my own, creating a plan that had goals for myself in terms of educational goals for my children, values that are based on integrity. I'm going to do what I said I will do. I'm going to ask God to bless it, because it is important that I don't have a basement for you to live in. As Michelle Obama says, she was schooled by her parents that we don't want you living in our basement, right? So my values were more based on issues of perseverance, grit, integrity, recognizing opportunities, opening doors for yourself and others. And so when you talk about purpose, I actually feel such joy now. And I often ask God, am I really in my purpose? Because I feel such joy. And when I speak, I pray and ask Him to bless the words I'm sharing for impact. Because if I encourage one woman each day to move forward from a place of self-pity or pain to pursue healing, then I would be accomplishing my purpose, because I would be cheering them on. And that's what I want to be a cheerleader for this category of women, because I support single and divorced moms who are recovering from the trauma of separation and divorce, so that they can regain the confidence that's been shattered, right? And achieve self-empowerment. And self-empowerment comes through growth. So that, using my 3 method, heal, grow, and thrive formula. I remember a friend of mine, never forgotten it. There are some things people tell you and it sticks with you, and it's years ago. And when my marriage broke up, he said to me, Clover, success is the best form of revenge. Amen. And he was signaling to me at that time that, you know what, it doesn't matter what's happening to you now, but if you can make the comeback and move forward, you will be fine, because there is nothing as empowering as the success you create for yourself. Yeah. And so at this season in my life, I live in gratitude, because many who have gone through what I've gone through, they have gone through depression. My husband left when I was in postpartum. Well, the fraying of the relationship started then, right? When I was in that postpartum season. People go into depression, they go into chronic illnesses. They just never recover. They live under the covers of life, just not wanting to resurface. So I really live in gratitude. And I think because I have a bolder personality, I think God is encouraging me to share with vulnerability and to really encourage other people to say, you can do it too, right? But you need to travel your healing journey. You need to work on it. And it is a season of life that is longer for some of us than it is for others, because healing is not linear. And healing has a life of its own and a timetable of its own for everyone.
Right. So what does being a now woman mean to you in this season of your life? And how is she different from who she used to be?
All right. So here's what I'll say about myself. With intermittent and inconsistent co-parenting, I didn't have a choice but to show up for my kids. No choice. I remember when my second daughter had finished high school in Scotland, and she was going to Canada to U of T. Her dad had gone to U of T. And he could have gone and helped her in that transition season. or he could have asked his friends to assist her. No, I was the one who had to call on my friend, who opened her doors and saw her through that season into University of Toronto. The same with the father of my last child when she came here to Vancouver to go into college, and I said to him, aren't you going to even come up and see how she's settling in? No. I was the one that had to go to the college, go to those, information sessions, because now I had to re-educate myself all over because, it's different from when I was going to college to see what was on offer, what was included in the payment package, and all of that. So because I have been compelled, I didn't have a choice in showing up. So for me, I continue to show up. And where I am different is that I am bolder, I am more committed, because I understand that fear and shame is undermining the growth of too many people, whether they are teenage moms, whether they are in a relationship long-term that broke up with kids, or whether it's a divorce. But whatever the season that relates to the ending of a relationship or testing of a relationship, as in a teenage pregnancy, which the majority of them statistics says doesn't last. But it doesn't mean that you can't reinvent yourself. So my call and my cry is that reinvention is possible. It's possible through your healing. But healing needs a partner that looks towards growth, because healing on its own doesn't work by itself. You have to create your growth plan, because you are setting your goals, you are looking for your opportunities, right? And you have to be charting your way forward. So I would believe that the way I'm different is I am blowing a trumpet that says, it is possible, you can do it, I did it, you have more opportunities. It's just to find your community of thrivers who will cheer you on and who will link you to opportunities maybe unknown to you, or just be a support for you. So maybe that's where I'm different now, because that season of total focus on my kids and getting them to where I wanted to get them is over. So I can now channel my energies to other people who need me, and I have this public platform with which to do it.
So what legacy are you intentionally building for your family and future generations?
The legacy that I want to build, I want to really ultimately become known as a leader in the shared parenting space. Because as I have studied more, interacted more with clients, and just the everyday experiences of people in my circle, I realize that the co-parenting space is a space that is dogged by the 3 V's: the violence, the volatility, and the void. The violence, we don't put the microscope there, not enough. But parents are being killed at handovers. Children are being left with the boyfriends of ex-girlfriends or ex-boyfriends, and they die in their care. Sometimes it's not even physical violence, but it's those texts with the expletives, that battery of text that keeps coming in response to a question or a concern. So there's a range, but it's still violence. The volatility is that emotional roller coaster that everybody experiences. Because what I have learned is that even the person who initiates the divorce or the breakup, they will tell you that they still feel pain. Yeah, so they still feel pain. So it is a season of pain that's being navigated. And the void is that emptiness that we feel when things fall apart. And you fill that void through your healing. And so I talk about these 3 V's because until we name them out and recognize them, recognize the role they're playing with us, we are not going to be able to respond, not react, because respond is a calculated way of handling a situation. Reacting is volatility. That roller coaster where you say anything, you do anything, and you don't care. So these are 3 elements that we have to keep the focus on. And shared parenting is the way forward because more than 1 in 3 marriages are ending. And are we going to allow our children to live in ongoing pain, or as you say, generational cycles of pain? Or are we going to create an atmosphere of civility where we co-parent in a way that reflects mutual respect for both parents? So that's a legacy I would see happening.
Amen. I feel like we need to do a whole session, a whole training with you, but we'll talk about that another time.
For sure, anytime.
Yeah, so if you could sit down with your younger self, what would you tell her about the woman she's becoming?
Okay, so if I could have sat down with my younger self, I would have been probably more aggressive in implementing my plans. And maybe I would have reached out to people who I thought maybe had more information on opportunities. But maybe that could have been based on a little bit of fear. Not really sure at this time. But what I wish is that anybody like me who has gone through this season or is going through this season, don't live in fear. Do it afraid. I eventually did. But whatever you have to do it afraid. Because when you do it afraid, it gets easier. Because once you achieve one goal and you tick that off, you can cheer yourself on. I did it. And then you can go to number 2. And by the time you get to number 2 and number 3, or what I say, craft your 5-year plans, right? Because once you get through those first 5 years, you are so elated and feel so rewarded that you get that impetus to move to your second 5 years. And remember, parenting changes. You don't parent the same way between 0 to 10 that you do between 10 or 12 to 18. Parenting has changing seasons, just like your own life. So think of your life in terms of the changing seasons of your parenting role, where you can begin to do up-leveling and upgrading of yourself because the kids have gone off to college, or they may have started working part-time, so that relieves you of maybe, some bills, reduces your economic commitment. So as you are going through the season and the processes, be looking for windows of opportunities to move yourself forward, and also opportunities that bring you joy, because you need that joy to be able to move forward and live with enthusiasm and glee and, just in a cheerful manner, because we don't want to be living in doom and gloom. No, because there's life after your children grow up.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that makes you happy, look for windows of opportunity.
Amen. So for those that are like, oh, I need to talk to Clover, like, what else does she do? Like, please enlighten them about your products and services and how they can get in touch with you.
Okay, so my focus is on co-parenting. And again, I support single and divorced moms to regain that self-confidence that has been thrashed during that separation and breakup season, and to work towards your self-empowerment so you can co-parent peacefully, successfully, using my 3-pillar method: the heal, grow, and thrive. It's not a one-size-fits-all, because everyone has a different story. Everyone is at a different place on their journey. Everyone's situation is unique. So it's a tailored to you one-on-one coaching program. And you can get in touch with me by sending me a DM on Facebook, DMs, or you can email me at johnston.clover@gmail.com, and I will respond to you.
Thank you so much. Now, for that woman that is saying, oh my goodness, she resonates with me, that's what I'm going through, but she's on the fence, what wisdom would you leave with her?
All right, so sitting on the fence for any reason, for any situation or circumstances, it's not moving you forward. It's just jogging on the spot. It's like being in a rocking chair. My dad used to say, worry's like a rocking chair. It doesn't move you. There's no progress. And so for you to ultimately be the woman that you are created to be, and to become the best version of yourself for yourself, not just for your children. Your children grow up, and yes, you need to, have a robust emotional stamina, because parenting is not for the faint-hearted. So we always have to be building those muscles, those emotional muscles, and building our own psychological outlook. But ultimately, it is for you. And staying on the fence is not going to be moving you forward. So you definitely need help, and I am here for you, because I had to raise my children almost on my own from infancy to university. When my ex-husband left, my daughter was less than 3 months old when I finally recognized that he wasn't returning, and the other was 4 years old. So I have walked the entire journey from infancy to university.
And that makes a difference, because just having book knowledge, it doesn't hit. And I didn't know that fresh out of school years ago. And I'm like, but I know, they told me. But now that I have that book knowledge and the lived experience, I'm like, oh, it's very different.
Very different. It is very different. Absolutely.
More impactful. People can resonate with you when they say, I felt this emotion, I felt this way. You're like, I know what you're talking about. And then let me help you, give you those tools to help you cope with it. And then even just give them a story, because maybe you didn't handle it the right way, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Or maybe there are cases in which you could have been more aggressive in the pursuit of whatever it is you wanted to achieve. And because you were constantly being put down, or, the other party was tearing you down so much, you just didn't build those emotional muscles and the resilience to say, Don't care what you're saying. I'm moving on. I'm moving forward.
Right, right. Well, listen, Clover, I thank you so much. And like I said, I'm going to send you an email after this podcast because we do a lot of work with women that are in your niche. And I would love for you to be a referral source, but also to do some collaborative webinars together to really support them. So I just thank you so much for devoting your time and effort, and just in full transparency, I rescheduled on you so much. And that speaks to your patience, your wisdom, because God really needed you on my platform. So I thank you for having patience with me on that. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of Now Woman Rising. Thank you so much for your time.
You are so welcome, and I'm looking forward to the collaboration. I
Yes,
am
ma'am.
delighted to collaborate with you.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you
Take
again.
care.
Woo! Yes, Lord. That was so good. Sis, if nobody told you today, let me be the first. You are chosen, you are covered, and you are called for such a time as this. Keep standing tall, walking bold, and staying surrendered. Don't forget to subscribe. Share this episode with your sister circle and leave a review so we can keep spreading the word for this kingdom vibe. Until next time, this is Alicia Hurt reminding you, you are not alone and you were never meant to be. Now, woman, rise up and let's go.